What's up, peeps? Today I'm taking part in the Ugly Duckling Challenge, hosted by the lovely Corey over at Desert DIY. This challenge was super fun the last time, so I'm excited to join in again and watch everyone's videos today. I'm sure you're all already subscribed, but if not, I will link to Corey as well as the playlist down in my description.
Okay, let's talk ugly. So first of all, you can probably see it's really shiny. Pretty ugly. Not to mention, I don't think it ever fully cured correctly. As you can see, it's shiny. And you can see some knots actually coming through.
I started, as usual, by cleaning, beginning with a thorough vacuum of every corner. I use Palmolive dish soap to clean really grungy pieces, and it cuts through just about everything. And I use a microfiber rag to gently scrub. After the soap, I wiped it down with clean water and a new rag, then I let it dry.
Okay, so there is no way I'm gonna make it out here for very long because right now it is 94, feels like 97. And I'm pretty much all set with being in the garage, but I just want to test and see if I can actually get any of this off with my scraper because I prefer to not sand. It's super sticky, like you can probably hear that and see that. This glaze, this whole finish is failing, so let's give it a try, and if I can scrape and it doesn't like knock me out, maybe I'll stay out here for a few minutes, but it's more than likely I'm gonna be finishing this up tomorrow morning. But let's test. Can't hurt to test. I mean, except that it feels like 97, which means in my garage it probably feels like 115. Let's see what we got. Next layer down, that's this stain that was the first thing that I did on this piece, most likely somewhere in the neighborhood of like 22 plus years ago. Somewhere between probably 2001 and 2004 would be my guess. I know is when this got stained. So I don't really know how old this finish is, but I'm just gonna keep going like I said. Probably tomorrow morning. Or maybe just sand. We'll just see how far I can get with the scraper.
As promised, I got right to work the next morning. The scraper worked just as well on the side, and it only took about 8 minutes to remove the top layer. The other side went just as well. Unfortunately, when I tried it on the inside, fail. In a moment of sheer desperation, I pulled out the heat gun. It kinda worked, but
there's just no way I can use a heat gun. I mean, it's sort of working, as you can obviously see here, but trying to get an edge on any of this stuff on the inside is proving to be pretty much impossible, and I think I'm gonna have to do the unthinkable and actually use some chemical stripper. All right, off to Lowe's, and luckily that's only gonna take 1 YouTube second for you, so see you back here in a bit.
I gave my plastic grocery bags a new purpose by cutting them up and using them to cover the citrus strip after applying it. To apply it, I blobbed on a healthy amount and then spread it into a thick layer with a disposable chip brush. Then I waited about 45 minutes. Okay, so first time ever trying citrus strip, which sounds insane, but I've used other chemical strippers before, never this one, and I want you all to see exactly what this looks like on the top right now. Look at this. I think that's all my latex gone. Woohoo! Okay. Like I just said, first time that is dry. We'll see what happens here. Wet for 24 hours. Not in Phoenix. Okay. It's the waiting. It's the hardest part. Surprisingly, I scraped off all the paint and a bunch of the stain. As far as paint strippers go, it smelled better. I used mineral spirits and steel wool to neutralize and remove the residue. Now, normally I'd wear a respirator doing this, but my big respirator for fumes is broken and a regular dust mask just won't do anything for fumes. I opened doors and I turned on the fan, but I definitely recommend wearing a mask. To finalize neutralizing and to remove any and all residue, I also washed it down with soap and water, plus a final water rinse. Then I left it to dry for the night. Since I'm planning to turn this onto its side for the final piece, I'm going to need to finish the bottom too. So I removed all 4 of these felt feet using a small Japan scraper. That also took care of any residue, especially considering I got pretty sloppy with washing things down during paint stripping. Then I was really done for the night. This could be my last time using paint stripper. So messy, so dry here, and that is not a good mix. But I had the container, and the next morning I had a bit of time before the heat, so I dove in. I honestly don't know if it is the climate, if I just didn't use enough everywhere, or something else, but all of this was drying out before I even got the plastic on it in some areas. I wasn't feeling very hopeful, but I kept going anyway. With every inch of paint coated and covered, I left it to do its thing for about an hour. The same thing happened again with the bags pulling the paint right off the shelf, but that was a short-lived victory. The rest of this paint was all but impossible to scrape off. It was like the citrus strip dried out under the plastic or something. So weird. So I tried mineral spirits and steel wool off camera, but that was a nightmare with all the corners. Instead, I grabbed a wire brush, rag, gloves, and a hose and took this solid pine shelf out to my gravel to finish the job. After lots of scrubbing, plus a soap and water bath and a rinse, I was fully ready to get out of the blazing sun. This only took about 15 minutes, but here's me after that very little time outside. I left things for the night, with one final round of stripper applied to the last of the paint, and final removal of that stripper complete. I left the shelf to dry out in the sun for a few hours. Once everything fully dried, I started sanding. We're coming out of monsoon season right now in Phoenix, so things dry in no time flat. I grabbed 180 grit sanding screens and cut them down to fit my mouse sander. Probably should have gone with a 120, but eh. Then I followed up with a 240 grit using my orbital. I'm not as concerned with getting into tight corners with this grit, just getting an overall smooth finish. Off camera, I wiped everything down and again, left it to dry. That didn't take very long, so I was on to primer. And I'm using this Melange stain blocking primer again. It has awesome adhesion properties. And I think this cabinet will be a great test to see if knots end up showing through over time. Before I started priming, I had to make a bunch of repairs. I used Ace brand wood filler and smoothed out the end grain on these butt joints. When I faux, I'll do the graining as if I had mitered the corners. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm using Faux Effects set coat in the color khaki, and I brushed on one very solid coat. This is my all-time favorite base paint for doing any kind of faux finish. It's a superior bonding paint, and as long as you don't overwork it, the paint self-levels. I've been using Faux Effects products for over 15 years and get the most consistent results when I use this paint as my base. And I don't get anything for saying this, I just really love Faux Effects products, so I'll link to the faux store below if you want to check them out. Then again, you guessed it, I left things to dry for a couple of hours. When I'm doing a finish like walnut, the first step is to lay down an undergraining layer. This establishes the graining pattern, and the lines will end up deepening up with each pass. I'm using all custom mixed colors for this faux. If you'd like to know how I mix colors, you can check out 2021's Cozy Winter Challenge video, where I did faux walnut on a small table. I go into tons more detail about my glazing process in that video, and you'll find that link down in the description. I left this to dry for about an hour. For my mid-tone, I deepened the walnut shades slightly and also warmed things up with a touch of red. That dried for about an hour, then I added the small grain marks that walnut has. To do that, I use a check roller. I finished everything off with a final toning glaze and left it for the night. I coated the edges of the tape with a coordinating brown paint, let that dry, then painted 2 coats of khaki. The brown paint seals the edges so khaki won't bleed under and onto the faux. After finishing the second coat, I pulled the tape right away and let it dry. I'm using these 6-inch metal legs to raise the height to perfect bench status, and I got this pack of 4 legs off Amazon. If I remember to do it, I will link these down below. I measured and lined them up to where I wanted, marked the inside edge and all 3 screws of each, punched a pilot hole in the center of that mark with an awl, measured again just in case, then used a handheld screwdriver to attach them. Since pine is a softwood, I didn't want to risk stripping by using a drill. They seem pretty sturdy, and the legs came with these screws to attach, as well as some foam pads to protect the floor. And with that done, it was on to fabric. So the second I went to flip this thing over, yeah, I noticed my mistake. It's gonna get kind of tippy with that pivot point in the middle. AKA, I installed the legs entirely backwards. I did do this the right way, but I did that off camera, so now back to the fabric parts. So I picked up this upholstery foam to make a cushion. Unfortunately, I just didn't find the right fabric in time to make this video. Hang in for the beauty shots though, and you'll see what I'm doing instead. I'm using Varathane triple thick poly in a clear satin finish, and I gave the faux 2 coats of this. I did coat 2 plus 2 coats of flat on the inside off camera. I'm so in love with how this bench turned out, and if you haven't seen our bedroom makeover series, I will link to that down below. Also linked below is the playlist for this challenge, and don't forget to thank Corey over at Desert DIY for hosting. This blanket will do the job for now, but I will create that cushion eventually. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for being here and watching. Later, peeps! And then I promptly put them on backwards, because of course I did. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully that's good enough. It's done.